Welcome, everybody, to a special preview edition of All In with Art Stapleton, a New York Giants podcast brought to you by NorthJersey.com and The Record. I'm your host, Art Stapleton. Joining me now, special guest, proud Hoosier, all around the horn champion, all around great reporter, ESPN Bears reporter, Courtney Cronin. Courtney, thanks for joining me. I know it's a busy weekend, so we appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you for having me. I appreciate it too. And I hope you're ready for the snow, because apparently that is in the forecast for Sunday, which November 9th is a little earlier than I'm used to and wanting to see snow. But we'll see. We'll see if it sticks. That lake effect is no joke.
Yeah, we'll see over at Soldier Field. You got two quarterbacks who want to run around and try to make plays downfield, so that would be fun as well. Let's talk Bears. I mean, obviously it's a very interesting season. Ben Johnson's first, Caleb Williams is second. Giants coming there, not really, after watching last week and that thriller. Give me a sense of where the Bears are at right now. Obviously, right there on the edge of the playoff race. What have you seen this year? What have you liked about this franchise? Obviously, you've seen the rough years. Mm-hmm. So how have they turned it around this year?
I think they have competent coaching, and that's really like where this whole thing starts. Because when you think about the fact that they're 5-3 and that 3 of their wins came on the road in the final moments of the game, we followed up last week with the Colston Loveland 58-yard touchdown. The play, Caleb snaps the ball with 25 seconds to go. It's now or never. They win that game. They win in Washington after the defense forces a turnover. The offense gets in position, and then Jake Moody kicks a 38-yard field goal as time expires. And the game before that, they win on a blocked field goal. Those were games that this team last year would have found ways to lose, because you think about how many one-score games the 2024 Bears were involved in, and just like covering that team, you knew like once you were about to go down to the locker room, there's a couple minutes left, you're going to be going into a disappointed locker room, because this team has no clue, doesn't have the gumption that it takes to be able to close out an opponent when it might be a back and forth affair. There would be some coaching blunder, there'd be a timeout issue, there'd be, giving Jaden Daniels all those extra yards to then launch a Hail Mary with a bum shoulder. So there's all those things that just feel different this year. And I think so much of that has to do with how Ben Johnson is coaching this team. They're much more disciplined. And I know that some of the penalties, pre-snap variety would lead you to believe that they're still working on that. But in terms of the ability to close out opponents in ways that they couldn't, I think that that's the biggest change in events around this team, because you've got a quarterback in year 2, an experienced defense, experienced play callers on both sides of the ball, to where all of that, creates a team that doesn't lack competency the way that last year's and the previous year's teams had.
It's crazy because as you're describing what was last year versus this year, you're describing the 2025 Giants, so especially over the last 3 weeks, the idea that just unable to close out games, and even going back to the Dallas game in week 2 for the Giants, not figuring out how to make that one play, that one stop, giving a kicker who can kick it from 70, that extra 5-6 yards to make that field goal. So it's interesting. What I wanted to ask you about, and again, if you're not following Courtney, you should be following Courtney, because some of the work you've put out this year especially is great. I loved your enterprise feature. I hope we can get to that on the wristbands that quarterbacks do and do not wear. I thought that was really cool. But you've covered this team a lot. You've been around this franchise. And when there have been teases through the years, the idea of, we've seen it with the Giants. You feel like you've turned a corner, and then you turn the corner and you run right into a bus. Are you comfortable enough this year, from what you've seen so far, to look at and say, this is long-term, we can see the changes that have been made? Or are you hesitant, just like, we are, after year 1 with Brian Daboll, we've seen where they're at right now. Just give me a sense for that, because I trust your knowledge and your sense of where a franchise is. It's very easy to jump right in with 2 feet. So what do you sense?
I think that I'm kind of like half in, half out on that. In terms of long-term, sustainable, something that can carry over, not just be a one-hit wonder, Ben Johnson is that. Like, we've seen a coach who has the accountability factor that factors into what he does play calling wise. If something doesn't work, he goes back to the drawing board and figures it out. The run game was terrible the first 4 weeks of the year. And Ben was like, I take that so personally because I spend so much more time there than on the passing game. It's the foundation of his offense, to where instead of letting something that is subpar linger, he figured it out. And that is something a lot of coaches have problems adapting. I know that most everybody in the NFL will tell you adapt or die. Well, most people die. Most careers die before people actually like get to that point where they can become proficient at doing that. So I think that that's something, no matter which players come in and out of here the next couple of years, that's something that feels different with this group, that feels like it has a true carryover effect. Now with Caleb Williams, I don't think anybody could give you a downright yes answer. It's going to work out. He's going to be the franchise guy just yet. Like, we're at the halfway point. Team's 5-3. There are 3 games that they lost in there where he got outplayed by a backup quarterback in Tyler Huntley, that they found out less than 24 hours before the game that Huntley was going to be playing. They got dog walked against the Detroit Lions, and they let what happened on Monday Night Football in the season opener, and some of the ways that they didn't close out the Vikings, some of the inaccuracy issues that continue to pop up with Caleb, those were highlighted there. So he's on the right track. Will we know if it works out? Not for a couple of years. And I think that that's an okay place to be, where it's not Drake May and what he's doing right now with the New England Patriots. You're like, they've got their guy. He's hitting milestones that Brady hit, at one point of his long Patriots career. Like, there's all of those things that I think show you they've figured it out. We need a bigger body of work, because Ben Johnson's the first one to tell you that it's not perfect, that there are some down moments during the week. It's not all smooth sailing, as he put it this week with Caleb going into games. But he's done enough for this team to come out the winner in 3 of 5 wins. Ones that were not like, surefire things like it was against the Cowboys and obviously against the Saints. He's still having some issues with accuracy. They set the bar at 70%. He's well below that right now. But he's on enough of a trajectory where you're like, if he and Ben Johnson continue to click like this, if the offense continues to be functioning the way that it has been, then there will be some good things to come in years to come. But I don't think that any Bears fan, there's a lot of Bears PTSD out there of doing it during the Nagy years, where you think, hey, Mitch Trubisky, and granted different quarterback, but also a top quarterback. Is that sustainable? The answer was no, but there's also differences to where that defense was generational with Vic Fangio. Like, that defense was in a spot where they carried the offense and covered up every flaw for that quarterback. This team is not built the same way, and that's a good thing, because I think it really does put the onus on the quarterback to learn it, to get it right. And so far, he's done pretty well with that in the first half of the season.
It's kind of crazy, because the more you talk about it, the more it sounds like Giants years with Daniel Jones are very similar to the Bears years with Mitch Trubisky. And the idea, when do you know? You don't really know. You don't always know. And now this year, what's interesting is that people point to Caleb Williams when they're talking about Jackson Dart, the idea of, well, can you really separate a quarterback and the coach that he was drafted with and having success with? But I don't think it's the same situation, considering the coach that was in Chicago last year was not an offensive coach that was here drafting Caleb Williams. So you almost needed a new coach to kind of find Caleb Williams a little bit. So that's kind of where the Giants, the interesting aspect of it. The one thing you mentioned earlier about the run game, when you look at these Giants, I mean, they haven't been able to stop a nosebleed on the ground, especially the last 2 weeks. Is Ben Johnson stubborn enough where he won't just run the ball every single down the way Kyle Shanahan did at the end of last week against the Giants? Or do you think Ben Johnson has really developed enough, like you said, that the bread and butter is essentially the run game, where he's not going to have Caleb go out there and try to prove something, to try to throw the ball all over the place? I'm just curious on your thoughts from that, because I'm not sure why any play caller would come in against the Giants defense right now and not call left, right, run to the edge, do whatever you got to do, but this Giants can't prove that they need to stop you until you're going to change your play call.
Yeah, and I think that, Ben, from what we've seen of him as a play caller, like last week was weird because there were all these trick plays, and it was like, what are you trying to prove here? And obviously they ended up needing that level of ingenuity because it became a shootout. Now, against a team, I think the Giants gave up 159 on the ground last week. Obviously, Christian McCaffrey had an incredible game from scrimmage, pretty much all over the place. Conversely, the Bears ran the ball from the eye test and from the stats, like it was the best it was most functional they were on the ground, because Kyle Monangai is the in between the tackles workhorse sort of back. And now they get DeAndre Swift back. And it was interesting because Ben talked about it today, is like, how do you divvy up carries when you now have two healthy running backs? Because Swift was out last week. And his answer, I thought, was kind of telling. He's like, I believe in a guy having the hot hand. One guy, if he's feeling it and giving us a spark, we might lean on that a little bit longer. So if that ends up being Monangai as effective as he was last week, why on earth would you get away from that? Because, there were some times where, he ran the ball for 176 yards on 26 carries. He had a couple catches in the passing game too. Like, he was the star until Colston Loveland became the star rookie of that game. Like, I don't think that that's a one-hit wonder. I really don't. And I think that against this Giants team, when they know that D-line is probably a better pass rush than they've seen to this point, if you want to work around that and you don't want to have anything exposed up front, I think you lean on the ground game. And knowing how much the ground game matters to Ben Johnson, I don't think he looks at it as a way, because obviously, like, there's the idea that, like, he's a genius and he's, can be a borderline cocky when he calls games and all this stuff. The Bears are still a 5-3 team that hasn't won anything yet. Like, you can't overlook any opponent, even one that's 2-7. You win how you have to win, and they need to start playing complete football games. He's the first one to say that. Like, they have to start complimenting each other in all phases. So I don't think you do anything to jeopardize that.
I want to ask you a little bit about Monangai. In addition, obviously he's a North Jersey guy. He played his high school ball at Don Bosco. He was here at the Giants local pro day. They liked him. There was a chance that they could have drafted Monangai. They obviously end up with Cam Scadaboo a little earlier than what they would have drafted Monangai. But being a Rutgers guy also, with Monangai, it seemed like he waited his opportunity. Not that he wasn't involved, but last week was really the big, heavy workload. Had you guys seen that, in practice? Had there been a feeling that Monangai needed to get more involved with the offense, or was last week just one of those seize the opportunity kind of games, and now you look at where things go forward?
I definitely think it was trending towards this guy's going to get his opportunity. And he, just like he did at Don Bosco, when I think it was Jalen Berger in the backfield with him when he was a 4-star kid, Kyle, is a less recruited player. He ends up taking over that job and being the better back. Same thing at Rutgers. He waits 3 years for that opportunity, leads the Big Ten in rushing, doesn't fumble. And now, it's a 7th-round pick. Nothing was guaranteed for him. To come in and have an opportunity, one game where DeAndre Swift wasn't healthy enough to play, he took an opportunity and he literally ran with it. And so I think that this was a long time coming. It wasn't just that, it just, popped up and Kyle figured it out. He plays the underdog role really well. And I think that is something that truly embodies what he is and what he's brought to this offense, because they didn't spend big in free agency when a lot of people looked at running back saying that's a clear need for your team. First 4 games of the season, a lot of people looked at that and said, this one's coming back to bite you because you didn't invest in the running back room. Swift is Swift dances at times with his feet, but once he hits a crease and he can get outside the numbers, he is explosive as all get out. That's wonderful. I still think you need the workhorse back who, in football terms, the whole lathered up thing, the more carries he gets, the more effective he gets, and more willing, or I guess not willing, some defenders are to, not tackle him, to make some business decisions. He hits it hard. And that's something that I think was really impressive last week, just the physicality in which he ran with, the violence in which he cuts with. And that gives this offense, a completely different element with him as the lead rusher than we saw with DeAndre Swift. Now, they have a nice balance. We saw the balance in the Saints game, which is where Monangai had his first touchdown. We saw it building that way the week before against Washington. I think if they can get more of that, he's going to continue to work his way, or to continue to stay up at a 20-plus carry a game, like baseline, more often. Probably not going to be every single game when you have another running back out there, but that's when he's at his best. I mean, throughout his career, the reason he was so successful at Rutgers, they just kept handing him the ball. Like, he can handle a big workload, and that's something I think Ben knows, the staff knows, and they want to continue to capitalize on that.
It's crazy because you're talking about the impact of Monungai on the Bears offense. That's really what Cam Scadaboo did for the Giants, and it's unfortunate that he had such a gruesome injury and is out for the season, because the offense was taking on his physicality and his personality. I wanted to ask you just the flip side. I wrote a little bit of this week about Jackson Dart and Caleb Williams, how they didn't have their paths cross at USC, but they certainly were intertwined with Lincoln Riley coming in and Dart deciding to transfer because he saw the writing on the wall, and then Caleb coming into USC. Things worked out for both quarterbacks. Now they're against each other this weekend. I'm curious from your perspective, because we got this when the Giants went on the road after beating the Eagles and they went to Denver. The feeling of where the Giants were and just how the entire Denver defense was waiting for Jackson Dart, waiting for Cam Scadaboo. These young Giants were going to show them, that they're not as good as they think they are. Obviously, that's 3 losses ago for the New York Giants. From a Bears perspective, as wild as it was last week, what sense do you get from the Bears about Jackson Dart coming in here on Sunday? I would imagine it's not the same as what Denver thought, but what's your take? What's your feel for what they expect from the Giants on Sunday?
So they faced a young quarterback in week 7 when Spencer Rattler played before he was benched, before they made the switch to Tyler Shuck. And I think that you view it similarly. Obviously, Dart's a first-round pick. The Giants felt highly enough to go back into the draft and go get him in the first round. So there's that level of respect to where if he doesn't see something, he's adept at getting out of the pocket. So I think it's a sign of respect when a guy is that talented, and the teams will say, we want to make him win from the pocket. To me, they know how dangerous he can be with his legs, and he's gashed teams like that before. He did it with Denver. He did it with the Saints. That I thought was, their way of like a tipping of the cap sort of thing. But,
right.
It's unique because this year's quarterback draft class obviously hasn't yielded much except for Jackson Dart. And so the fact that he's like the marquee guy, I think he gets more attention, and guys are paying attention. Some of the players talked about just like seeing some clips about him on social media and seeing kind of what he does, more than just like film study. There's a swagger, there's a moxie, and there's a way that he plays that I think really earns respect from veteran players, veteran defenders that you have to go against, who know that they probably have, in terms of the knowledge part, they have maybe an upper hand there because he just hasn't seen what teams are going to throw at him yet, or a lot, different coverages, exotic coverages. I mean, look at what happened with Dennis Allen going against his former team. Like Spencer Rattler didn't stand a chance in the second half. And I think that there is a bit of that the Bears walk into this with, but are not looking past a rookie quarterback because, hell, they let Tyler Huntley, who's a backup, on short notice, beat them last week. They're not in position to let anybody like off the hook here or like overlook any quarterback that they go against, including a rookie.
They go from the oldest quarterback in the league, right, or just about, to now facing the youngest quarterback in the league in Jackson Dart. It's going to be very interesting. We may get snow. We may get muddy field at Soldier Field. It's going to be a fun Sunday. Courtney Cronin, tell everybody where they can find you this weekend and moving forward.
So my Twitter handle is @CourtneyRCronin. I host a radio show on Sunday morning. It's called Best Week Ever. It's on ESPN Radio from 7 to 10 Eastern. We preview all the games. We talk about the college slate, and then we get into the big weekend in the NFL. So I am very excited for this game because like we are really like in the thick of it now at week 10. And I think this is where teams start to separate themselves a bit, and it's certainly in the NFC North, just given how top-heavy everything is with the Lions and the Bears tied for second place. And, whatever happens Monday night in Green Bay is going to affect the division race. It's an exciting time to be covering the NFL.
And the Giants are desperate for a win. If they lose, it's the longest losing streak in franchise history, which is kind of crazy. But we'll be there to document it, hopefully, if all the flights make it all out in time. Courtney Cronin, thank you very much for joining me, for being all in. For producer Paul Wood, I'm Art Stapleton. Thanks for watching All In. We'll be back after Sunday night's game with a post-game pod from Soldier Field. Everybody have a great weekend. Enjoy yet another November weekend of football.